Hello, this is Jimmy M, and I'd just like to share with you my experience, strength, and hope. I hope you enjoy.
My name is Jim, and I'm going to share with you today something that was shared with me previously by others in the rooms, okay? And it was instrumental in my recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. And the more I listened, the more I recognized how true it was in my life. And through discussing it and sharing it with others, I also came to realize how common it was among addicts and alcoholics. And so I think it's a good idea to share it with you guys in hopes that you'll benefit from it too. One of the things I want to say is that I don't think I've ever had an original thought. So anything that I'm sharing with you guys was taught to me. There was a point in my life when I entered into recovery that I knew everything. I had the answer to every problem on earth. I was just know it. I knew it, man. I was a smart, intelligent guy that knew everything. And so before you would finish a sentence, I already was telling you the answer to your problem. And I find that's pretty common amongst alcoholics and addicts also. And the problem with that is nothing I ever did worked. And I could not, for the life of me, understand how I could be intelligent and figure legal issues out, figure computers out, figure all these mechanics out, and all these different things. But I could not figure out how to stay sober and live life to what was manageable and where I had a degree of happiness and contentment. So one of the most difficult parts when I came into recovery was being honest enough to recognize that my best thinking wasn't working, to be open-minded enough to recognize that there's possibly another way, and to be willing to set my belief that I had all the answers aside and listen to somebody else and be willing to follow their advice. And when I first came into the rooms, I was told, you want to get a sponsor, you want to get somebody that has what you want, and you want to get that, you want to learn how to get that. So of course, I found a sponsor that had a Corvette and a bunch of women hanging around with a lot of money. And I ended up with a Cadillac and a lot of money and women hanging around me. And it wasn't too long before I was high and drunk. And after a while, somebody took the time to teach me that a sponsor is somebody that loves you enough to guide you through the steps. Because I associated myself with the NA program early on, and I became extremely involved in the fellowship. And I didn't work any of the steps. I was at 5-6 meetings a day for years. And I was sober, but I was still operating on my own thinking, and it didn't last very long. And so I'm going to share with you, as briefly as I can, but as comprehensively as I can, what went on in my life. Basically, what I'm going to share is my experience, strength, and hope, what it was like, what happened, and what's changed, what it's like today. And the first thing I want to tell you is I come from a very loving and good family. Okay, my dad was a workaholic. I don't remember a day going by where there wasn't food at the table. I'm sure all parents and children have issues. We certainly did. But he was a good man, and my mom was an angel. And, you know, they're both passed now, and I'd like to dedicate the fact that I'm sober and doing well today to them. What my dad taught me through his actions, more so than sitting me down and saying, son, this is how it is. He wasn't much of like that, but he taught me so many things. And his example taught me that I needed to find a place in life where I was secure. And I'm just going to wrap it up here. And I hope I don't do a bunch of misspelling today, because I'm good at that. So, secure. Is that secure? Good. That's good to me. And His example told me that the way you get secure is you get a job or a career. You get a car. You get a bank account. You get a house. You get a wife and children. These are some of the things he taught me were secure. He figured the way he operated in life was if you had a job, you could make money, and if you had a car, you could get to the job, and you could put your money in a bank account. Then you could buy the house and provide for the family. And so what he taught me was security was found in the things of this world. A job, a car, a bank, a house, a family, and all the other stuff. You know, bling, we call it. That's what they call it today. Making it sound just so old that it's past that. Bling, you know, jewelry, nice clothes, all the stuff, the glitter, the glamour. That was important too because that determined what level in society I was in. So the more bling, the higher, more important. That's what I was taught. And so basically the lesson my dad taught me through his actions was that security, what life was all about, was found in the things of the world. And if I had them, I would be secure. And I mistakenly believed that if I was secure, I was automatically going to be happy. I believed that if I had all this, then that would equate to happiness. And I'd be happy or content. And so I set out on a course in life to learn as much as I could because other things here that were important were education, okay, skills, things like that. So I became skilled in my field. I got the job, the career, I got skilled, I got the car, I could get to work, I got the money, I put it in the bank, I bought the house or whatever it was, I acquired the family, I provided for them, and I thought that was all going to turn out to be happy. And it didn't. I still felt uncomfortable. I still felt like I didn't belong. So what I started to do was I started a cycle. And I thought since I haven't reached happiness yet, I must be lacking something here. And since I had everything, that meant I needed more. So that's what my modality went to. That's what I started to do, is I acquired this stuff, still hadn't reached a point in my life where actually I was content and happy. Still felt weird, different, whatever you want to call it. So I just started getting more. And I still wasn't happy. Because I just didn't feel right. I just didn't feel right. When I was younger, I was shy. Then I was introduced to drugs and alcohol. And what that did is that changed the way I felt. So that became something I needed because that was the only way I had ever found to feel good. And I thought that my physical feelings, if they were good, then I'd be happy. And to a degree with drugs and alcohol, I was in the beginning. But that led to unmanageability to the point where I started losing stuff. And then I wasn't secure anymore in anything. And I certainly wasn't happy because even though my body felt good, my mind, I couldn't avoid the fact that now I disappointed my parents, I lost my car, I went to jail. I did all the things that addicts do. You know, it says in the rooms that addiction leads drug addicts to 3 different places: jails, institutions, and death. And at some point in my life, I experienced every one of those things as a result of my drug addiction. Right? So, I got into this mind frame. And the way I did it, let me try to explain to you how I did it. I'm going to erase this a minute. We all got that. So let me just erase this. I'm going to try to tell you how it, as practical as I can, how it actually worked for me. These are circumstances in life. Okay? And we perceive these circumstances through our five senses. All right? So here I am. By the way, I'm extremely attractive. Yeah. But this is me. And since I was a kid, I had a long nose. But I perceive the circumstances through my senses. You know, hearing, taste, touch, sight. Okay? And then that goes into my mind. And if I happen to perceive it as a problem, what I do is my mind starts to seek solutions to the problem. And what I do is experiment. As a child, I did. So, I perceive through my senses a circumstance. My mind processes the situation and the circumstance. When I perceive it to be a problem, my mind sets out to find solutions. And I experiment, and I try this or that, logic and reason and all of those things, intellect, come into the picture. And my mind goes through this thing that I could not explain to you. And what it does is it selects possible solutions, and I start to employ them. And sometimes the solutions that I come up with don't work. You know, if I've got a tire that's flat, my mind says it needs air, so I pump it full of air, but I never fix the hole, and it just keeps going flat as soon as I take the air off. So that does, my logic and reason and all that says it's more than just lacking air. So I check off in my mind, in my subconscious somewhere, that just putting air in it doesn't work. So then I find a patch kit, and I patch the tire, and it works. I put the air in and it holds the air. So I check that off in my mind as it works. And I do that through life with all the many, many circumstances I perceive. I seek solutions, I find answers, and my subconscious mind checks off what works and what doesn't work. So I end up with what I'm going to call my life experience. I've now got a wealth of experience of what works and what doesn't work in a variety of situations and circumstances. The next time I perceive a problem in my life or a situation or a circumstance with my senses, my mind doesn't have to look so hard. Because what it does now is, rather than seek out every possible solution, it goes into my life's experience bank and it finds a time previously when I encountered something similar or the same. And what it does is accesses the answer. And I don't have to think about it anymore, I just do it. And that's pretty normal with human beings. You know, give you a really brief example is, my rent's due, I get a job, I make a paycheck, I hand it over to the landlord, my rent's paid. I know now whenever the rent's due, that's what I gotta do. I don't have to think about it. I just go into my experience bank and I say, I know what I gotta do, get a job, get a paycheck, get a rent. I don't have to think about it. All of the situations that worked temporarily, they gave me some form of solution. Okay? They allowed me to formulate a belief down here that I can do this. I can do this thing called life. I'm smart enough to do this. And this belief down here was paramount. It was number one in my life. Whenever I encountered anything, I believed that I had the answer. Like I told you when I came in here, I had the answer to everything. Just in the end, the ultimate end of it all, I failed. I ended up drunk, ended up high, ended up letting somebody down, I ended up in jail, prison, or hospital, or something. So, we understand how this works. And I'm going to go back now to the story in Genesis about Adam and Eve. And just for a show of hands, how many people have heard the story about Adam and Eve? Is there anybody that has not? Okay. I'm going to tell you that story again, briefly. Summary. In the beginning there was God. And he created man. And he placed man in the garden east of Eden, called the Garden of Eden. That's what it's referred to. And during the cool of the day, God would come into the garden and they'd hang out. And man had everything that he needed. And God recognized that he needed a mate, so he created a woman from the man's rib, and he called her Eve. And he said, only one thing you can't do, don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for the day you do, you surely die. So the story goes on to say that, and this is a tree, guys, in case you didn't know. That's a tree. That's a tree. The story goes that Eve went and was deceived by Satan, the serpent, and ate, and then brought it to Adam, and he ate. And the story says the first thing that happened was they noticed they were naked. Okay? So, prior to that time, they were not aware, self-aware. They weren't aware of the fact they were even naked. They had everything they needed in the Garden of Eden. Everything. There was no problems. They were hanging out with God in the cool of the day. There was no problems. Then they ate and noticed they were naked. And the first thing that Adam and Eve did was employ this. They perceived their situation as a problem. They ran it through their brain, their mind, and they started to seek out a solution. And what the Bible says they did is they went and got fig leaves and they made clothing. And then God came into the garden and said, what have you done? And they said, we ate of the thing, and the projection came right into it. Adam blamed Eve, Eve blamed serpent. And God said, the clothing you have made for yourself, the fig leaves, they ain't good. You know, when it gets cold in here, they're not going to keep you warm. So he slaughtered a ram, I believe it was, and made them clothing from the skin of the lamb. Which, if you guys watch any of the movies, that's pretty warm stuff, man. You know? So, prior to that eating from the apple, the focus was on God. They weren't even aware, so. As soon as they disobeyed God, the focus changed from God to self. And they became self-aware. Then they started to employ this stinking thinking. They perceived their nakedness as a problem, made some clothes out of fig leaves, believed that they had it under control, and then God came in and said, this ain't good. And what that lesson teaches us, very simple, is that as human beings, our focus needs not be on self, but on God. For addicts and alcoholics, in both the Big Book and the basic NA text, it says that the core of this disease is self-centeredness. That is where the center of our focus is self. So I came in to the rooms with this whole thing going on. And I was told many times, but I couldn't hear it until I employed the first step, 3 steps. They are, admitted I was powerless, that my life was unmanageable, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, and made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood. The principles underlying that, each of those steps are, step 1 is honesty, step 2 is open-mindedness, and step 3 is willingness. That is, I had to be honest enough to say my way's not working, open-minded enough to say there may be another way, and willing to listen and follow direction. And that's the main thing, willing to follow direction. Because see, I never followed direction. No matter what you told me, I already had the answer in this belief. So I discounted what you told me, analyzed it before you even finished speaking, and already knew the answer to a question you never asked. Because I was just smart. And so, the 4th step says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So that's talking about cleaning house. That's talking about dealing with a lifetime of this. But before we go there, step 3 said, turn our will and our life over to care of God's word student. And so I got all lost there. How do you do that? See, because I also had an upbringing of some religious stuff going on. You know? And I was taught that in order to get something from God, like a blessing, I had to give something first. And the way it was taught to me was through the churches. If you want God's blessing, you need to pray more. You need to give more. All of these things. You need to fast. And see, I learned afterwards, there's nothing I can do to gain favor from God because He already adores me. The wreck I am, He already adores me. If I was the only man on the face of the earth, He loved me enough to send His Son to die on a cross so that I might live. He already loves me that much. There is nothing I can do to gain favor with God because He loves me as much as He can possibly love me right now, the way I am. So I had to get away from that whole thought process. The way I was brought up through my dad, acquire this, that, and the other thing, and you'll be safe and secure. Pray more, fast more, do this, do that, and you'll gain God's blessing. And I had to be taught something entirely foreign to me. And that was, there's nothing you can do. God already loves you. Follow my direction. And I didn't know how to do that. I did not know because I had all that religious junk in me. And I had all that conditioning as a child that if you want security, you get these things. You get a home, a job, money. And when it didn't change me to happy, I just got more and more and more. And for those of us who are addicts or alcoholics, we know one drink is too many, 1,000 never enough. We just want more and more and more. So the first thing I had to do was crush this belief. I don't have the answers. I don't. Today I don't have the answers. I'm just sharing my experience, strength, and hope with you. I'm not telling you how to live because I don't know myself. Just through the grace of God today, I'm sober, and I've been sober a few 24 hours. And I'm able to share with the next person. The way it worked for me was, first I had to employ the first 3 steps, and then I had to change my focus back to God. And for me, what that meant was, I would wake up in the morning, and I would say, I know that it's not going to work for me. I know. Today's going to be a disaster unless you intervene. And I don't know who you are, but I know you're there. So intervene. And as I did that day after day after day, and God never spoke to me. I never heard it. Hey, man, we got to go this way. What ended up happening for me was, there was a battle on. Paul talks about it in the book of Romans. And that is, my brain was saying, do it the way you were brought up, but my heart was telling me, no, just follow this direction. And so I started to turn to my heart rather than my mind. And things started to work for me. But that wasn't enough. My God has to have skin. I got to be able to sit down and hear something back. So the way God worked for me was right in this room. I was taught a very simple process. And the process is this. The first thing along, we already know what I've spoken of. So what I did was perceive a situation, go into my life experience and find a solution, and then jump into the action. I get a short-term goal, I reach it, I formulate the belief that you got this. Okay? And I do that over and over. Ultimately, down the road, I fail. Something happened. You know? I got to pay rent, I need a job, I get a job. Still don't feel it. I take the money, I'm going to go pay the rent. But before I do, I want to take a couple dollars, just a 20, and get a hit because that'll make me feel better, and then I'll pay the rent. Of course, I never made it to the rent, man. We all know that. We all know that one. I never made it. I remember one time my mom gave me $16 for a set of spark plugs to change her spark plugs. I went and bought dough, came back to her. They're done, Mom. Never touched the spark plug. What a rotten kid I was. That woman was an angel of put over me. You know, and I felt so bad doing that, man. But I had to have that drug. Because the modality was getting more. And that's what I lived for, and that's what I did. So, when I got into the rooms, I was taught that my thinking was the problem, not my circumstance. For years and years, I thought that if I owed rent or whatever the situation was, that was my problem. I said, I get the money and pay the rent. What I never saw was that my thinking brought me to the situation where I hadn't had the rent paid on time. It was my thinking that was the problem. My thinking was based on the belief that I could do this if I just acquire more. Jesus, and the rich man in the Bible asked Jesus, what do I got to do to have the kingdom of God? And Jesus said, you have to obey the law. And I said, I never offended him. What else do I have to do? And he said, take all your riches and give them to the poor. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. The reason he couldn't do it, because he was of the same mind frame as the advocate. That is, all that stuff in his mind brought about security. And we all know it. We become what we do. That's Bob the plumber. That's Fred the electrician. Oh, that's Ed the lawyer. That's our degree of, what do you call it, when you know, our station in life. We become what we do. And so we got to keep doing. We got to keep getting more, because we got to maintain that station. And what ends up happening is we fall short because we're human beings. So we're going to lose the station somewhere down the road. We're going to lose the station, or we're going to maintain the station and never know happiness, never know contentment. So when I got in the rooms, the first thing I was taught, that my focus had to go back on God. I had to accept that I didn't have the answers. My way ain't working. It might be another way. Can't only give it a try. Then I had to turn my will and my life over to care of God. And I've heard that explained in a million ways. And I'm not saying any of them are wrong. But but they weren't working for me. I needed something more simple. Simple. And so a guy taught me that the way I walk that out on a practical day is I perceive a situation, I run it through my mind, I come up with a solution, and then rather than jumping into the action, I filter it. I filter it. And the way I filter it is I get a sponsor. I go to meetings. I go to church. I go, by the way, I'm lacking on that one. I go to, I work the steps. All these different things. I get a home group. So now what I do, I wake up, I perceive a situation, I come up with a solution, and rather than jumping into the action, I turn my will and my life over to God. God has put people in my life, and the big book, and the NA text, to filter that. And so I say, hey, you know what? I got a flat, and I can't get to work. So I've been thinking about it, and I'm thinking maybe I should just buy a new car. After all, it is old, and I deserve it. I work every day. And so I go through that to my sponsor, and he goes, how about we start with the tire? And that's not what I want. I want a car. Who wants a... So, all right, I'll buy a set of tires. You don't need a set of tires. The next person says, at the meeting, I go in there and I hear somebody say, you know, I had a flat, man, and I was going to buy a car, but my sponsor said don't. And so I went out and bought a set of tires, and it kind of cut me down on my money a little bit, you know. Now I got to face this and that and the other thing, and I got to pay this, and I really don't have the money, but you know what? I could have just bought a tire instead of a set, you know. So I learned that through listening to the meeting, and the church, and all these different places. I'm going to hear different stuff. And I ultimately find out that, well, you didn't even need to buy a new tire, you could have bought a used one. And then down the road I might find out that you didn't have to buy anything other than a patch. You take it over to somebody and they patch it from the inside. You know. And this guy might tell me, patch it with a plug. And then I filter that a little more for that. And that guy says, no, plugs are illegal today. They don't hold up, they're unsafe. So take it to the other guy over there and he's going to patch it from the inside. And it's legal. And it's safe. So the point I'm making is now I filter it all. And in the end result, I actually come up with something that works for a long time. And my life gets better. So for me today, I wake up, I make my coffee, I sit down with my cup of coffee, and as soon as I'm out of bed, guys, my mind's gone, it's running. I don't know how many of you like that, but mine's running. I've already decided what I got to do today, and I'm at 3 o'clock in the afternoon already. I haven't even had my first cup of coffee yet, but I've already planned out what goes on at whatever time, 12, 1, 2, 3. I've already got 50 things done in my mind, and I haven't even finished the coffee yet. It's just the way I work. And so what I've learned to do over time, through a sponsor, was I take the first 10 decisions I make in the morning and think, well, now, I know they're wrong. They're based on impulse. They're based on how I feel about having my coffee. They're based on all kind of stuff. That's useless. So I throw my first 10 decisions out, and periodically throughout the day I get into these mood swings where I start going like, if y'all watch me, I go 80 different directions at the same time. And I got a bunch of different solutions and answers and situations figured out, and then somebody stopped me, and I have to throw them all away. So again, because they don't work. So I continuously filter my thoughts. And what that's doing in the long run, what is my pen? What that's doing in the long run is it's renewing my life's experiences. So now, what I used to think worked really doesn't, but something does. And now I got a brand new check mark. And what used to work that never did is now over in the X box. It's no longer something I consider. And I'm learning now to not perceive a situation going into my life's experience and just act on it, but to think. Something I never did. Think it out. That's why you see in the rooms, think, think, think. First things first. Easy does it. If you want to keep something, give it away. Never made sense to me. Never made sense to me. How do you keep it? Give it away. Today I'm learning that's exactly how I keep it. Giving it away. The healing process is reaching out to another man. I learn more reaching out to somebody else than if I reach out to myself to cure it. That's the process. The focus changes to God. And it's all in that little simple first story in the Bible almost. You know? The focus changed to self, and I've operated in self ever since. And the answer is right there at the beginning. You turn the focus around and give it to God. Stop relying on the intellect. Start relying on the heart. Start asking your sponsors, your church members, group members, listen to the meetings, work the steps, working the Bibles. The big books and all that. Reading the Bible. All of those things. The Bible says in Romans 12:1 and 2, I beseech you, I beg you, therefore, brother, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable. Be ye not conformed to the ways of this world, the acquirers, but transformed, taken out, by the renewing of your mind. That's what's happening for me. I'm employing God in my life in a real sense. And I'm rewriting my life's experience back. And every single day I wake up a little bit more advantaged than the day before. Where the other way around was every day I'd wake up, think of something new, try it out, and end up more disadvantaged than I was the day before. Because I created a new problem. And so today my problems are going away. I'm encountering new ones. I'm employing what I call the filter system. And I'm coming up with solutions that actually work. And so that's what I want to share with you guys today. That there is an alternative. You know, a lot of us ain't so young anymore. And a lot of us we're all intelligent. We're all intelligent beings. Most of us are extremely skilled in one area or another. I'd say all of them are. But there's just something that keeps defeating us. And we keep going through that cycle. In a church setting, I'll give you the cycle. Because this is a cycle I live by. I admit that I have shortcomings. I already know. I'm doing a religious thing. So I go to a church and I say, I don't have enough money and whatever. Refrigerator broke, whatever. I'm having relationship problems. And I'm taught that I need to turn to God. But in order to get the blessing, I got to pray more, fast more, give another 10%, give 20 this week, whatever it is. And so I'm doing what I'm told. And I'm not saying that fasting or anything, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's not necessary to get God's blessing. But if your heart says to fast or tithe or whatever, you do it. But it's not necessary to get God's blessing. He's already given you the blessing. You just got to claim it. So what I would do is I would recognize that I'm not where I want to be in my relationship with man or God. I would rededicate myself to a new course of action. And then I would set out with my everything, good intentions, and I would start the course to achieve the goal of getting right with man and God in some form or fashion. And then I'd burn out because you just can't sustain that. You just can't sustain that. That level of commitment. You can't sustain it. No human being can. So I crash and burn again. And then I go through the whole grieving process. I blame you, and then I go to feeling sorry, and then I go to forgiveness and acceptance and all that stuff. And I get over here, and I rededicate myself. I go over here, I recognize, oh, I'm back where I started, blah, blah, blah. I rededicate myself, and I do the same thing over and over and over. And I never get anywhere. That's the cycle. The cycle is broken. I recognize that my best thinking brought me to this situation. And I need God in my life to handle it. Just like Adam and Eve needed God to make them clothing in order to keep them warm. The fig leaf thing wasn't working. But God had a solution for it. So I need to stop leaning to my own understanding and start leaning. I think it's John 14:26. I'm not sure. But it says, when I leave, Jesus was talking, when I leave, I'll send the Comforter. My Father will send the Comforter. And He shall teach you all things, and bring all things to your remembrance. And that's the Holy Spirit. And it's not done through fasting more and giving more or acquiring more and getting a station in life and all of that. It's real simple. You turn to God, your focus is on God, and then you ask your fellow man for help. And you know what? It doesn't always work where you ask the right guy. You know, you may ask somebody that has no clue how to live. That's why it's important when you go into meetings, you don't sit in the back and chat with the girls, but you listen to what's being said. Because your objective here is not to just get through the day sober, but to actually learn how to live life in such a way that you're victorious. That's what the victorious Christian life is. For guys that go to prison, they sit on their bunk, they recognize wholeheartedly that they've crashed and burned. They recognize they've done the wrong thing. So now, you know, they're not evil people. They want to do it right. So they make a commitment to themselves on their bunk, on their locker, wherever they're at, in the closet, the mom. I'm going to do it right this time. I'm not getting out and going to use. I'm going to do it right. And they mean it with every good intention. And then they sit on that bunk or that locker and they start planning what they need to do in life to reach their goal. And all they're doing is resetting the stage for getting a station in life. Because most people think their circumstances is their problem. So if I don't have money, I don't have a roof over my head, I need a job. So if I get a job, that area is fixed. It's not. Because until you fix the thinking, you're just going to take the money and go buy dope or something eventually because you don't like the way you feel. God's going to change the feelings. It says in the steps over here that we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. We humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. It's not self-effort. The fruit of the Spirit is mentioned in the book of Galatians. And it says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, meekness, and guess what else? Self-control. See, I believed my whole life that self-control was the ability to control self. So if I committed myself to doing the right thing, then I could achieve. I just had to discipline myself. The only problem is that never will. Because there's one fruit. It has many attributes. God gives each attribute to each man a different measure. That is, you get the fruit of the Spirit as a Christian, and it already has all the attributes. love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, meekness, and self-control. Each man gets each attribute in a different measure. The more you yield, the more you reach out to your fellow man, the greater the attribute increases in degree. Self-control is a gift given to man by God. It is an ability to control self, but not through self-will. Through God. So I don't know what your understanding of God is. My God is Jesus Christ. My Lord, my God is the Father. My Lord is Jesus Christ. Your Lord doesn't have to be Jesus Christ right now. Because my Lord has so much wisdom that he's willing to meet each and every one of us in our ignorance. If you don't know today that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, if you just commit yourself to the God of your understanding, he will reveal himself to you. Just like he did to me. And one day you will know that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. That's a journey you and Jesus Christ will take. It's not something I'm going to sit here and pontificate over you about. You got to accept Jesus or you're going to burn in hell. I'm not that man. Okay? That's not me. Right? You don't have to be a Christian either. You don't have to be a Christian church's way. All you've got to do is talk to the God of your understanding on a daily basis, and he will reveal himself to you. All you got to do is work the steps. And remember the system. Here's my stinking thinking. Here's my action. The God in my life today is everybody and everything that he puts in my life to help me. Big book, meetings, church, sponsor, home group, the fellowship, all of those things. The Bible. If you lack an education, educational books. But your focus can't be on a career, or a car, or a house, or a relationship. Your focus has to be on God. Otherwise, it's just not going to work, guys. And you do not have to accept anything I've said here. You are absolutely free to go out and do it your way. You're absolutely free, and if you have doubts and you can't figure it out, AA book says, give them 20 bucks, go have another drink, do some, it doesn't say give them 20 bucks, but it says something about, well, go do some experimental drinking or something. Control drinking, go out and do some controlled drinking. And you know, basically, all of us do. So you don't have to accept anything I've said. You don't have to believe in God the way I do. You don't have to do any of this. You don't have to accept any of this. But if you keep doing the same thing you've been doing, you're going to keep getting the same results you've been getting. I'm offering you here something that was offered to me, and I finally accepted. That's changed my life dramatically. You guys know that I help everybody as much as I can. And the end product is not a bunch of pride. It's healing, man. I am healing on a daily basis. What I used to have to get drugs for, those feelings, to get the feeling right, I feel good in my skin. As wrinkled as it is, I am quite happy. I am extremely content. I've got a support group in my life that are people that absolutely love me. I got a, call him Texas Ranger over here. This guy will shoot anybody. It's Texas Ranger. He loves me. You know, I've got a bunch of people that will do anything in the world for me. And I never had that because when I was growing up, everybody wanted to get away from that guy. Robbie wanted. It'll let you down. It's not that way today. So, I've taken up enough time. I want to thank you all for taking a few minutes to hear what I had to say. And I can only hope that, you gain something. Thank you.